This is Banza Academy. Today we will familiarize ourselves with the requirement elicitation interview technique. In the process of gathering requirements, it often happens that compiling documentation is not always sufficient. Some items need to be clarified and expanded. Not all stakeholders have provided information clearly and completely, and some may not have the time to document all the necessary requirements. In such cases, the interview technique can help, which will provide the specific answers needed to launch other phases of the project. In addition, the interview helps gather the necessary information about business processes, problems, and needs. Understand product or service requirements in greater depth and detail. To confirm or refute ideas and solutions. To agree on future actions and areas of responsibility. Improve communication with individual stakeholders. At first glance, the interview seems like a simple tool. You talk to the client, ask questions, get answers, and you're done. But it often happens that even though you have talked extensively with the customer, it is still unclear what to do and what conclusions can be drawn from the conversation. So, what is the secret of a successful interview? Luck, contact with the client, engagement, simplicity, creativity? In fact, the key to a successful interview is good preparation. Initially, it is necessary to clearly define the purpose of the interview. Although it may be tempting to use one interview to accomplish several tasks, including identifying requirements, validating, and solving problem situations, it is better to choose one main task to understand what goal we should achieve as a result of the interview. For example, a good goal might be to clarify user needs before introducing a new build of a product. However, a bad goal would be to clarify user needs on the new build, assign responsibility for maintaining the old version, and agree on hiring new developers. It is important to remember that interviews should not be used to convince anyone of anything. It can undermine credibility and drown out the voice of your interlocutor. Good interview timing can greatly increase the effectiveness of the interview and help you achieve your goals. Here are a few recommendations. Determine the length of the interview in advance. Typically, one interview will last between 30 and 60 minutes, depending on the complexity of the questions and the topic of discussion. Prepare a list of questions. This will not only allow you to use the time more efficiently, but also to make sure you don't forget important questions. Make sure you have enough time for each question. Break up the time into blocks and distribute it among the questions so that each question gets enough time to answer. Try to stick to a schedule. If the interview lags on one question, move on to the next one and come back to it later if you have time. Don't forget time to prepare and take notes. Allow some time after the interview to analyze the information you receive and write it down in the appropriate document. Allow some time for unexpected questions or problems. If the interview doesn't go according to plan, don't panic. Use your professional instincts and experience to find a way out of the difficult situation. Now let's get our heads ready. Interview time is very valuable, so what you can learn beforehand must be learned beforehand. Before the interview, research the business domain, including terminology, business models, and processes, as well as key decision factors and competitors. Find out background information about the interviewee, including his or her position, attitude toward the product, and cultural background. Examine relevant documents, including standards, guidelines, manuals, and previous interview results. Thorough preparation will give you confidence and support during the process itself. Important: if you need any supporting materials during the interview, diagrams, prototypes, and visualizations, it's time to prepare them now. Now is a good time to make a list of interview questions. If you are new to the field, This list is a necessary basis on which you will rely. However, even if you are a professional, relying on a list is much more effective than relying on your own memory because you might accidentally forget something important. This is where we can turn to our goal. All questions should guide us toward it. Asking the right questions is the key to getting the right information. It is important to ask the right questions in order to get the most useful and valuable information from the interviewee. Here are some tips for formulating questions. Formulate briefly and clearly. Avoid using unnecessary words in a question that do not improve its accuracy. Focus on one topic in one question. Don't try to ask multiple questions in one. This may lead to insufficiently clear answers. Clarify with specific definitions. Avoid using the words often, usually, and sometimes, and offer specific examples to clarify the question. Speak in language that your interlocutor understands. Use language that everyone in the process understands and avoid using internal slang or specialized terms that others may not understand. Use open-ended questions. They allow you to get more detailed information and also do not impose your point of view on the interlocutor. Refer to experience. Ask about how existing processes work and what can be improved rather than asking about predictions of future behavior. If you are still nervous after all the preparation, try a pilot interview with a colleague, a leader, or even in front of a mirror. This can be helpful for newcomers and experienced professionals alike before meeting with a particularly important interviewee. Conducting a pilot interview can help you hone your skills and learn to better control your nerves. Reflecting on the questions and possible answers will help you feel more confident during the real interview. In addition, the pilot interview will give you the opportunity to get feedback and learn how you can improve your interviewing technique. Now is the hour X of your interview. Don't be nervous and remember the most important points. Check understanding often. Ask for examples of their issues. Let interviewees know what will be done with the information. Remember to apply your listening skills. Show interest in what the interviewee is saying. Stay focused on the conversation. Be respectful. For a successful interview, it is important not only to ask good questions, but also to be able to listen properly. Therefore, it is important to use active listening techniques in the main part of the interview. To practice active listening, you can start by maintaining eye contact, nodding, and using verbal cues like I see or I understand to show that you're engaged with the speaker. You can also ask open-ended questions to encourage the speaker to elaborate on their thoughts and feelings. There are many active listening techniques, but if you're unfamiliar with them, you should start with one or two so you don't get confused. For example, you can use phrases like, yes, I see, and I hear what you're saying to show your interlocutor that you're listening carefully. Remember, however, that no technique can replace genuine curiosity. During the interview, it is important to take notes so as not to lose valuable information. You can use a notebook, post-it notes, or a marker board for this purpose. If the interview takes place online, you can record the meeting so that you can analyze it thoughtfully later. If you have doubts or need help, you can call a colleague for help. This can be not only useful but also effective. One person can ask questions and another person can record the answer. This allows you to focus on the interview process and get the most out of the answers. At the end of the interview, summarize. For example, you could begin by listing what was agreed upon. This could include key decisions made at the meeting and agreed upon action plans. Then you can discuss the questions that were not answered and leave them for further consideration or to find a solution. It is also worth discussing how the information will be used. This may include clarifying what data needs to be shared with other team members or how it can be used for specific tasks. Finally, it is important to identify specific actions and those responsible for carrying them out. This may include assigning tasks and deadlines, defining individual roles and functions, and clarifying the communication channels that will be used to communicate between team members. Breathed out. After the meeting, write down the meeting minutes and send them out to all interested stakeholders. They should summarize the main points of discussion, any decisions that were made, and any action items or follow-up tasks that were assigned. Meeting minutes are important because they serve as a permanent record of the meeting and can be used to remind attendees of what was discussed, to inform absent members, and to provide a reference for future meeting. They can also be helpful for legal or regulatory purposes, or as a way to document progress on a project or initiative. After collecting the information, there is one last important step left: processing the results. Each of the respondents provided certain facts that can be turned into requirements in the future. In order not to lose valuable information, it should be systematized and stored in one place. This approach will allow faster and more efficient use of the results in the compilation of requirements, as well as provide easy access to information for all participants in the project. Let's summarize and weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of the interview technique. Advantages: doesn't take long for respondents. Facilitates communication. Requirement elicitation interviews provide a forum for clear and open communication between stakeholders. Allows for immediate clarification of data. May give ideas and opinions that are difficult to get using other techniques. What about the disadvantages? Response rates may be too low to be statistically significant. Results are harder and take longer to classify and quantify. Incomplete information. Requirement elicitation interviews may not uncover all of the information needed to fully understand user needs and requirements. Biases and assumptions. Requirement elicitation interviews can be influenced by the biases and assumptions of the interviewer and the interviewee. Now you're ready to conduct your first interview, and may you be attentive, empathic, and curious. Thank you for your attention, and see you in the next modules.